is in the foreground, and then I'm doing the next character who is right behind, and I will work so on back. Something that has been noticed is that I tend to use different colors for each layer, so that way, although I do label them, I know which layer is which, and I can move and manipulate images without getting them confused. I know that may seem strange, but I find it quite helpful when I am working on a piece. This is also based off of a 1950s comic book called Teenage Romances, and they're always very overwrought with drama. There's always a morally suggestive character corrupting somehow another character and defying that 1950s wholesomeness. And in this one, it is the sultry brunette who is threatening to flirt because the other person is going to be done with their summer vacation before the person in the foreground. It's all very, very dramatic. I, again, have noted that in all the comic books, there is a severe lack of ethnic representation, and I do my best to remedy that. So, as you will see when I begin to color it in, that people's skin tones vary and can be pretty much any ethnicity. I lightened up the background there. You saw that just happen. So I can start inking. I'm using a very fine brush. What I've been doing lately is doing a layer in a fine black ink, and then I will go over it with a thicker black stroke, normally around the edges, just to give it a stronger outline. What's funny about this picture is I actually forgot and started coloring it before I did the outline, so I had to go back a step, but that was fine. I really loved the hat that's in the original picture, so I tried to recreate that as authentically as possible. I will have people ask me if I trace, and I do not. What I tell people is the world is made up of shapes, and if you can find out what the root shape is, then it's easy to extrapolate from there. Not that people who copy aren't learning about form and technique, but I really enjoy the challenge of just using my eyes and seeing if I can break out the image. Also, I am influenced by the genre that this comic book was originally done, but I also have to stick my own style into it. So you'll see that the bodies are better formed and a little more filled out than their 1950s counterparts. I've also changed the female characters to male because that's a part of the joke. We're just finishing some of our background characters there. And the blanket. This was a fun exercise in cross-hatching and shading. I did similar shading to some of the images. For example, the hair of the character in the foreground, and his partner is done with the shadowing that is traditional of that era, because they didn't have the nice brushes and filters that we have now with our processors. see, I am making sure that different ethnicities are represented there. I guess we could say is a Latino character, and then we have an African American character in the back, and varying shades from that point on, just to give it a modern sensibility, even though I'm lampooning another area. It's funny, a friend of mine saw this before they saw the thing I was spoofing, and they liked the fact that I used polka dot shorts. So I changed the background to an off-white, so it looked a little faded. The sand, I also used the original color and some of the original texturing, but as you can see now, I'm going through and creating a shadow. Now how I do the shadow is it's basically a black ink pen, but I do it at a lighter opacity, so what that means is it's basically see-through. It just gives the illusion of a hard shadow, and it's done as a layer above even the ink. I like it because it's got an animated feeling to it, and I didn't think it was too distracting from the original 1950s look. I also tried to make the backgrounds look a little more worn. You can see in the umbrella I've done a lighter orange, and on the wake of the water I have done yellow at the top and then some pink on the sand, which matches the original comic book. Now as you see, I'm going through here and I'm putting a more subtler shade. When I first do it, it looks like a very muddy stroke, but then you'll see I'll go through and I will soften the strokes or blur them out so they look a little more like it's blended, like a painter would blend oils. And then I go through, as you can see, and add highlights, which really makes everything pop. As you can see, we have the gentleman in back there getting their highlight as well, just to make everything a lot more three-dimensional, which the original drawing couldn't do, but we can do here. I love the pink and the light blue in the hat as well. I thought that was really fun to do and created a nice, authentic touch. The perspectives of the characters are really great, and I really much enjoyed it. You can see the two covers back to back here, and just it was a ton of fun to do. Now this next one is an adult performer named Colby Keller, who's actually really into art. A friend of mine is friends with him and sent him this drawing, and as I understand it, he really liked it and retweeted it, so that was very kind of him. And although it is naughty, it's not too bad. It's more tongue-in-cheek, which is why I thought it would go well with the 1950s cover. Colby Keller is a big fan of a lot of different kinds of art, and although I believe his main source of income is adult work, he's been a big fan and proponent of creative things. As you can see there, I am working diligently on his face to try to get it right, and I had to play with the eyes a few times before I was happy with where it was. This is based off a still from a web series called Capitol Hill, which is directed by a friend of mine named Wes Hurley, and is actually a very popular gay series, so you should check that out. Also, if you want to check out my art in general, you can find me on all social media, Tumblr, Instagram, and Facebook, and I will provide links to that in the doobly-doo below this video. With this illustration, I went more for a cartoony style, which is very indicative of the Capitol Hill series itself. If you check it out, it's very, very campy. It also lampoons old TV shows like Dallas and Dynasty and stuff like that, and stars a fantastic drag performer named Waxy Moon, who is also a friend of mine from college. I also thought that the little bear was a nice touch in the photo, so I made sure to include that. You'll see here in a moment, after I put in the background, that I will ink it in just broad strokes. This is different from my usual style of doing a thinner pen and then going back through and doing a thicker outline. I just used a thick outline to begin with, more of a graffiti style of inking. So I didn't do it so much with the hair, but that was a little more delicate. You'll see here as I get to the structure of the body how that comes into play. So apparently he is a Cub Scout, although not like any Cub Scout I have ever seen. I mean, Cub Scout's the really young one. Boy Scout, well, it's all inappropriate, so it's silly. That's the main point. So you can see there in the arms, I'm using that thicker, initially a stroke that tapers when it comes down to a wrist or an elbow, just to give that more of a comic strip feel as opposed to comic book or strict cartoon. Makes it seem a little more lampoon. Now coming in, we are going to do him in a more saturated, fleshy pink, and normally I pull my flesh tones from the color orange, which I can pull to either brown or a tan, but considering that this performer is known as a bit of a redhead, I figured peach would be a better skin tone for him. I made sure I did all of his shading and color first, so that way when I did the background I could paint freely and not worry about the main drawing. You can see that the background I pulled a two different color, because I knew I was going to be doing some white, and I wanted to be able to see what I was doing. This drawing was actually a lot of fun to do, because I don't often do high cartoon-esque style. As you can see, that really plays out in the chest and the torso when I drew it. This extreme is a bit silly, and when I showed this picture to Wes, he really, really loved it. So hopefully I can do some more illustrating for him and for the show in the future. Thing is, I bet he'll never figure out that I do this for ASMR as well. That's just a side benefit to link my two interests of whisper videos and illustration. In the future, I'm going to be doing a video based around classical art and antiquity, and that should be a lot of fun and also a lot different. It's going to be a lot more subtler in its coloring and its line and its pose. So this is the cartoony video, and then the next video will be a lot more academic and grown up. It's interesting because the vibe of the Capitol Hill series is very 1970s, so the colors that I used for the backdrop, I tried to make feel like was a lot of earth tones and yellow and orange, green and brown. And if you were alive in that era, those colors were everywhere. So it was fun to paint the background as opposed to draw it with a hard ink. I wanted to have a painted background, so it seemed more like an animated cell than it did a comic book drawing. Now you can see in the ground there I pulled in some texturing. I have brushes that can do that. That can make things look like pebbles and brick or leaves. You saw the leaves in the background there when I was building the trees. It was also fun to build the ferns and allowed me to create a foreground and a background look. They were adding that hard shadow in again, but this time it's not within the confines of an inked layer. Makes it look like it was more broadly painted, which was a lot of fun to do. And then you'll see in a moment I'll pull out the sketch work. So it's just the painted background. There we go. And yeah, so I really had a lot of fun composing this image and bringing it to life. And hopefully Wes and Colby enjoyed it. So remember, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe